Hi, welcome to this special class on Unacademy Unlock platform. Today, as part of our special YouTube class, we'll be looking at one of the important topics in our general studies papers as well as in public administration. We are looking at the topic corruption. We'll look at why this corruption is there, what are the reasons for corruption, and what could be the problems related to corruption, and what are the issues related to corruption, and what are the solutions. This is what we will be looking at. Before we start our discussions, let us look at the courses offered on Unacademy platform. As you can see it here, you have Unbox 2021 on purchase of subscription for 1 year or above. You will have 6 months free subscription. I think it is over. It is up to 10th December. And you will have annual price hikes on 9th and 16th December. You have a plus combo. The price hike will be 1000 rupees on 9th December, and 16th December it will be 3000 rupees. And there can be more increases also. So it is better you take your subscription as early as possible. Then similarly, you have price hikes for 1 year, and then also subscription hike for general studies plus GS courses. And new batches from 15th of December, new batches are starting. From 15th of December, you can see new batches on Unacademy platform are starting from 15th of December. It is batches for UPSC preparation. You have Mission 2022 comprehensive batch. You also have batches for 2023 2 years GS foundation batch. And then you will also get the entire GS material if you are taking a subscription 1 year and above for GS and combo. You will be getting 20 GS books, not only 1 or 2, 20 GS books. And optional carnival. There are 8 subjects of optionals, 8 optional subjects, 6 optional courses were launched on 8th December. And 4 more courses will be launched from 15th December. We have political science and international relations, sociology, maths, philosophy, history, management, and geography. These are all the courses that are being launched. You can take admission to all those courses, and of course, you can use our code. You can use our code PKS10, so that you will be able to get 10% more discount on courses. So this is what, and then what are the other courses that are available on Unacademy platform? As you can see here, there is a free test series also that is available here. On Mondays you have 20 MCQs, and Mrinal's Monday, and then on daily you have a current affairs test series, daily current affairs test series, where you will be asked 15 MCQs. You have to answer them in 15 minutes. Then Abhiyan, that is 15 MCQs in daily static quiz. And these are the courses which are free of cost, so you can enroll anytime. Then UPSC Combat, it must have been over 12th December, where you would have got those free subscription also. Then level up your UPSC preparation with iconic subscription, live mentoring, study planner, mains question and answer practice. So these are all the courses that are offered on Unacademy platform. So let us come back and look at what we have to discuss now, corruption, right? You have a good number of questions asked from corruption, both in in political governance papers, and if you take your entire ethics paper is nothing but about corruption only, and essay topics also. Apart from this, you also have questions asked from corruption in public administration paper 1 and Indian administration. Almost most of the case studies you can say are from corruption only. So let us start with this one. What is corruption? As you can see here, corruption, very simple definition, as you can see it on the screen. It is nothing but it is the abuse of entrusted power for private gains. This is what even World Bank also has defined. It defined corruption as a use of public offices for private gains. Using the public offices for private gains. That is what and that is how we define corruption. Why this corruption is bad? Because it erodes trust, it weakens democracy, it hampers economic development, and it exacerbates inequality, poverty, social division, and environmental crisis. This is why corruption is very bad. Exposing corruption and holding the corrupt accountable can only happen if we understand the way corruption works and the systems that enable it. We can understand, we can come out with solutions to corruption only when we understand why corruption takes place. This is very important. Unless we know the reasons why corruption is taking place, we cannot find out, we cannot, we cannot come out with any tangible, practical solutions. That is what we say here. So, why this corruption takes place? This is what we say. Corruption takes place because of, as you can see it on the screen also, social, political, economic factors. All of them contribute to corruption. It attacks the foundations of democratic institutions by distorting electoral processes, perverting rule of law, and creating bureaucratic quagmires whose only reason is because of soliciting bribes. These bureaucratic quagmires are there only with the objective of what we call taking bribes. Either this this kind of either red tapeism, the objective of this red tapeism is to take bribes. Economic development is stunted because the foreign direct investment is discouraged, and small business within the country find it often impossible to overcome the startup costs required because of corruption. What are the startup costs that we are talking about? We are talking about the startup costs in terms of bribing the municipality, electricity department, irrigation department, water department, roads department, police. This is what we call startup costs. So now proceeding further, let us see why this kind of corruption is taking place, right? As we study corruption, we say is a systemic and a systematic in nature. This corruption is what we call a systemic and a systematic in nature. What do we mean by that? Corruption takes place in a systemic manner, in a very organized manner. It means corruption is not a one-time activity. Corruption is not some kind of some kind of the whims and fancies of the people. It is taking place in a highly organized manner. This corruption will take place in a highly organized manner. That means we know that corruption will definitely be there. We know that corruption will definitely be there because of the way the systems function. That is what we say in a systemic factors are responsible for corruption. The same question was asked in our polity governance paper also. Corruption in India is a systemic in nature. It is related to the functioning of the systems. What are the systems that we are talking about here? We are talking about the political system. We are talking about the economic system. We are talking about the administrative system, and we are talking about social and cultural systems. All of them combined together are resulting in massive levels of corruption. That is what we say. Massive levels of corruption are because of these factors combined together. Let us try to understand this from India's perspective. Let us try to understand this from India's perspective. Why? Why we have so much of corruption? Look at India. Political factors. The most important reason why we have so much of corruption is because of political factors. What are we talking about here? What we are saying here is that this corruption is because of the functioning of our political system. For example, to contest elections, right from panchayat president to parliament, you have to spend a lot of money. You have to bribe voters. You have to spend money on liquor. You have to spend money on the political rallies. You have to spend money on giving cash to the voters at the time of elections. And it requires huge amount of money. On an average, a candidate contesting for Lok Sabha in 2019 elections had spent around 30 crores minimum. There is no guarantee that they will win elections. So why are they spending so much amount of money? That is the question that we have to ask. Why they are spending so much amount of money? If there is no guarantee of winning elections, why they are spending so much amount of money? That is the question that we have to ask. Why? Because they believe that because they believe that by spending so much amount of money, they believe that by spending so much amount of money, they can easily return or get back their investment with so much of interest and profit once they get themselves elected to positions of power. Once they become MPs, once they become MLAs, once they become ministers, then they can easily earn so much amount of money in those 5 years of time that they have full confidence in themselves. That is the reason why they don't mind spending that much amount of money. As you can see, it is a vicious cycle here. Since you are spending a lot of money in elections, you have to recover that money. And to recover that money, you have to indulge in corruption. And you recover that money again in the next elections, you need to spend again 30 crores. And again for that also, you have to earn money. So at the end of the day, you are caught in this kind of vicious cycle. Now, the question that is being asked here is, how could you earn so much amount of money when you become MP or MLA or minister? How could you earn? This is where we talk about the systematic nature of corruption in India. This is where we talk about the systematic nature of corruption in India. What are we saying here? What we are saying here is that when we talk about this systematic nature of corruption in India, we have this absolute monopoly of the state, in terms of allocating resources, in terms of control over the resources. So if you are a minister, if you go back, this is what we have said in the beginning itself. We said that corruption means use of public offices for private gains. So if you are a minister, what will you do? If you are a minister, you will use the office of minister to make a huge amount of money. For example, government land is there. What do? Government land is there. You will give this government land to the private sector in the name of industrialization. You will say that the industrial policy of the government is that they want to encourage industrialization, more industries. So the market value of the land is say 10,000 crores. Market value of the land is 10,000 crores. And what do? You will give the same land to the industrial sector, to the industrials for 100 crores. And you say that it is the policy of the government. It is the policy of the government. And this policy of the government cannot be questioned in a court of law. And then you will take huge amount of bribe from the industrialist. Industrialist will give 1,000 crores bribe. Still, the industrialist will benefit by almost 9,000 crores. This is how corruption takes place in India. Contracts are there, government contracts. As sometime back Indian Express newspaper has reported, there was corruption in almost every contract. At least 10-15% of the total amount of contract money will have to be given to the ministers or to the bureaucrats. It has to be given to the minister or to the bureaucrats as bribes. This is systematic corruption that we talk about here. This is what we say systematic corruption. And that is the reason why, people want to be in politics and bureaucracy, so that they can indulge in this kind of massive levels of corruption. Next reason why is that these political factors. There is no accountability in the system. There is not at all accountability in the system. So you can indulge in corruption, and if the cases are filed, and you will know that the cases will never be decided in your own lifetime. So you can easily, they will never be decided in your lifetime. So what you can do, you can easily earn any amount of money. That is the reason why if you look at it, if you look at most of these things here, it is only the criminals who always say that they have a lot of faith in our judiciary. The moment a case is filed, they will be very happy. Why? Because they know that in their lifetime, the case will never come to any logical end. This is where we have so much of corruption. Then look at these administrative factors. When we look at administrative factors, we are still continuing with the colonial administrative structures, wherein there is absolute monopoly of the state, wherein we have the absolute monopoly of the state. We have huge amount of discretionary powers in the hands of the people at the top. There is centralization of power and high levels of secrecy in decision making and implementation processes. We have complete secrecy in decision making and implementation processes, and of course, the complete absence of accountability mechanisms. The basic difference between British parliamentary democracy and Indian democracy is that in the British parliamentary democracy, individual ministers are held accountable for their actions. On the file, the signature will be that of the individual minister. So they are held accountable for their actions. Whereas in Indian parliamentary democracy, we don't have any individual accountability. What we say is that our ministers are collectively responsible to Lok Sabha. So if there is any case in the Supreme Court or any other places, immediately the minister can say that it is a collective decision of a Council of Ministers. It is the collective decision of the cabinet. So automatically the matter it will be closed. This is what exactly A. Raja also has argued in the Supreme Court. He said that the decision to allocate spectrum free of cost was a collective decision taken by the cabinet. So there is no accountability here. So you can see here monopoly plus discretion plus secrecy minus accountability. It means that you have absolute huge amount of corruption. The kind of corruption which becomes systematic in nature. Unfortunately, in the last 75 years of our independence, we have we have not really bothered to make any kind of changes to our administrative system. And this is where the problem is. We have not really made any kind of changes to our administrative system. These administrative systems were designed by the Britishers. They were designed by the Britishers only with the objective of exploiting the colony called India. They were designed by the Britishers only with the objective of exploiting the colony called India. And we continued with the same administrative structures even after 75 years of independence. And again, the same kind of exploitation also goes in the name of democracy. That is where the problem is. Then we also have these economic factors. As you can see it on the screen here, trade restrictions will result in more corruption. For example, the license quota permit Raj. For example, this tendency to restrict the trade by using artificial guidelines, giving more powers to bureaucracy. You can see here is that in GST, since the GST rates are very high, you can see so much of corruption also in implementation of GST. So much of corruption also in implementation of GST. Then we have government subsidies. I'll give you an example here. According to Government of India, only 22% of people are living below poverty line. But the food subsidy of the government is given to 75% of population in rural areas and 50% of population in urban areas, combined together 67% of population. That means almost 50% of population is getting these subsidies. 45% is getting these subsidies. Do they deserve them? Obviously not. This is part of what we call organized corruption. Organized corruption. Similarly, take other subsidies. Wherever you find, what you can see that most of the subsidies are going to only those people who simply do not deserve them. Who simply do not deserve them. That is also one of the forms of organized corruption. Price controls. For example, you can see before 1991 we had, even now also, we have this Essential Commodities Act, wherein the government artificially tries to control the prices. It will say that hoarders will be punished. But this hoarding will take place on a large scale. How? With the connivance of the administrative officials. These administrative officials, bureaucrats, would join with these black marketists, and they would indulge in massive levels of corruption. As and when any kind of market distortions are there, it will always result in corruption. You can see here multiple exchange rate practices and foreign exchange allocation schemes. This is what we had before 1991. Right now we don't have. Natural resource endowments. Natural resource endowments. This is where another corruption we see here. What is this natural resource endowment that we are talking about? We have maximum amount of corruption in allocation of land. We have maximum exactly. Yes, Sunidhi. Everything is in public, but nobody is bothered. Everything is in public, nobody is bothered. So what we are saying here is that, take the case of real estate. I gave you the example. Take the case of allocation of coal mines, maximum amount of corruption. Take the allocation of this spectrum, where we have seen corruption. Take the allocation of mineral resources all over the country. In every state, this is where what we find massive levels of corruption. Why? Because, as they mentioned, all these natural resources are with the governments only. All these natural resources are with the governments only. All of them are with the governments only. And the government, whether it is state or central, has absolute monopoly. The governments, whether it is state or central, have absolute monopoly as far as allocation of these natural resources are concerned. This is where we should remember Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi could envisage all these things. That is the reason why Mahatma Gandhi has said that state should only be the custodian, trustee of the resources of the people, of the country, of the society. That means, what do we mean by that? It means that the state can only use those resources. They can allocate these resources, they can use the resources, but they cannot own the resources. That means they cannot buy or sell, they cannot transfer the resources. Why? Because those who are part of the state, those who are part of the state can always indulge in massive levels of corruption. When the state absolutely owns all those resources. That is the reason why Mahatma Gandhi has said that state should not have absolute monopoly or control or ownership over the resources. Over the resources. But unfortunately, after independence, we have what we call opted for Nehruvian model of development. In this Nehruvian model of development, what you see is that state is in this Nehruvian model of development, what we see is that the state is not the custodian of resources, but it is the owner of resources. Jawaharlal Nehru, he committed a big mistake. What was the mistake committed by him? Jawaharlal Nehru, he committed the mistake that he equated his personal honesty and integrity with that of the state. Since he is very honest, has so much of integrity, he also believed that everyone who would be part of the government and the state would be like him only. That is, they would always use the resources of the country only for the development of the people. They would not indulge in corruption or nepotism or favoritism. That is the reason why he had opted for absolute monopoly of the state over resources, natural resources. He believed that those who are part of the state will be like him only. Those who are part of the state will be like him only. And those who are part of the state will be either using these resources only for the benefit of the people. That is where he has committed the mistake. Then what happened? All those rulers who had come to positions of power have used, absolutely misused these powers of the state, starting with Nehru's own daughter Indira Gandhi. When she was asked about corruption in 1970s, when her state governments had become very corrupt, when there was so much of anti-corruption movement in the country led by Jayaprakash Narayanan, she dismissed corruption by saying that corruption at the end of the day is only a global phenomenon. That means she said that corruption is there all over the world. Why are you pointing about only India? That is what. Why? Because whatever the institutions that Jawaharlal Nehru has created have been ruthlessly exploited by his successors to benefit themselves. Especially as I give you the example of natural resources. Then we also have sociological factors. That is what we say for corruption. What are the sociological factors that we are talking about? What are sociological factors? Yes, right. What you are saying is Prem. What you are saying is definitely right. What you are saying is completely right. So, sociological factors. What are the sociological factors that we are talking about here? What we are saying here is that After 1991 in India, we have seen rapid changes in terms of our ethics and values. We have moved towards we have moved towards what we call materialistic societies, wherein people believe that people believe that what really matters is only success in life. It does not really matter how you are going to get that success. As we study in our ethics paper, it does not really matter whether it does not really matter what kind of means you are using. Immoral, unethical, illegal means are justified in the name of success. That is where. And another thing that we can see here is that what happened here is that the tendency and also the opinion of people about corruption also has changed. People have come to accept this corruption is this corruption is going to stay here forever. It will be here forever. They have come to accept the fact that corruption will be there in the country forever. So what we have done is we have developed tolerance towards corruption. We have developed tolerance towards corruption. Take the case here. The last time we have seen some kind of a movement towards agitation against corruption was in 2011, Anna Hazare. After that, every political party is corrupt. So who will lead this corruption movement? Anna Hazare movement, please remember, was a civil society movement. Before that, when was the last time any political party fought corruption? Before that, when was the last time any political party fought corruption? Whenever the last time any political party fought elections on the basis of the issue of corruption? Before Anna Hazare? In 1989, when the major issue was Bofors. After 1991, either we have moved towards this liberalization, privatization, and globalization. So, what we can see there is that we have developed this kind of tolerance towards corruption. On the other hand, what is happening is that poor people, they realize the fact that this corruption will be there in the society. So what do? They also justify their own corruption, because anyway rich people are indulging in corruption, massive levels of corruption, and earning huge amounts of money. Rich people. So poor people also are demanding their own form of corruption. What is that? As you can see, government subsidies. They are willing to vote only for that political party that promises them more subsidies, giving everything free of cost. They are willing to vote only for that candidate who gives them more money at the time of election. And they justify this by saying that anyway rich people are indulging in corruption. Whether we like it or not, rich people are always their part of corruption. So why should we be left out? As we say in the English language, if you cannot beat them, join them. That seems to be the motto of poor people also. So we have developed this kind of tolerance towards corruption in India. The ethical infrastructure of the country is becoming very weak day by day. It is becoming very weak. Why? Because as I said, as we are moved toward more towards these materialistic societies, what really matters for the country, for the society, for the people, for the families is whether you have become rich or not. It does not really matter what are the means you have used. During the previous times, during earlier times, you could see that these corrupt people, yes, during the previous times, during earlier times, when people were caught, taking bribes or income tax rates, it was more of a shame for them in the society. other people in the society, their colleagues, their neighbors, and their relatives. They would treat them as literally untouchables, saying that how could you do those kind of things? Now the situation has changed in such a manner that if there is no income tax raid, if there is no income tax raid on your house, you feel bad. Why? Because income tax raid means you have lot of income. Automatically your status in the society will go up. People will look at you with lot of jealousy. People look at you with lot of jealousy, right? Right? Yes, Prem, we have lot of public administration sessions in the coming days, lot of them, right? We have a lot of sessions. We are doing both public administration and general studies. All of them will be doing, right? So, their neighbors would feel jealous, income tax rate on their house. That means they must be very rich people. That is the reason why income tax rate. This is how we have seen the kind of changes that are taking place in our societies. And even if you are suspended, even if you are suspended for corruption, immediately after 1 year, after 6 months, you will be reinstated. Why? Because politicians will demand, will need, will require only those bureaucrats who are corrupt and who can manipulate rules and regulations. That is where the problem is, right? How this corruption can be there? You can see here, corruption can take many forms. It includes many behaviors like public servants demanding or taking or favors in exchange for services. you know you are going to a government office, the district collector's office. You want your uh, you want your certificate, caste certificate, and the clerk there says that in normal course of time it will take you at least 1 month to get your certificate, and there is no guarantee that you will get it in 1 month. But he says that give me 1000 rupees, I will give you the certificate by tomorrow. What will you do? You will immediately give the certificate. You will immediately give him 1000 rupees. You will give that person 1000 rupees, and you will get back your certificate, right? You will get your certificate. That is how corruption takes place. This is a small corruption. Then go to the much bigger ones. Go to much bigger ones. You have a big industry, a big factory that has come up in a forest area. Suddenly, the Ministry of Environment and Forest comes out with new guidelines for industries in these forest areas. And the ministry says that you have to take all the permissions before you continue with your project. And all those permissions will take at least, at least 6 months for you, because you have to go through so many hierarchy levels and everything. And can you really afford to stop the project for those 6 months? You cannot, because you already have invested a lot of money. And then the ministry officials will say that if you want the permissions in the next 2 or 3 days, that also can be done, provided you give them a percentage of your project. 1% of your project. If your project is 5,000 crores, they'll say that give us 1%. You will get the all the right. You will get all those permissions within 2 3 days. That is what we say corruption. Next, politicians misusing public money or granting public jobs or contracts to their sponsors, friends, and families. That is what we find in India. That is what we find in India. You take any government scheme, any program, public money will be misused. And contracts, maximum amount of corruption in India is through contracts. As I have mentioned, you take any contract at the state level or at the central level, what you know is that you know what you know is that that contract will always have sufficient amount of money reserved for bribes. That is what it is, quite systematic. That is what we say, right? It is systematic, right? Yes, exactly. That is what people, all these contractors, one, what do they do when they are applying for these contracts? They will include this bribe money also as part of the contract. When they are not doing it, when they are not doing it, these public officials, bureaucrats, and the ministers will tell the contractors that include the bribes also in those contracts. People don't know any of these things, right? Similarly, you can see corporations bribing officials to get lucrative deals. Corporations bribing officials to get lucrative deals. Take the case of these big contracts in the defense army, running into thousands of crores of rupees, running into thousands of crores of rupees. And what you can find is that inevitably there will be lot of corruption there, lots of corruption there, right? Corruption can happen anywhere, as you can see it on the screen. It can happen anywhere, in business, in government, in courts, in media, in civil society, in health, in education, in infrastructure, in sports. Everywhere you can find corruption. That is why we say that corruption is all pervasive. There is no place where you don't find corruption. There is no place where you find corruption. Look at this, this, you know, look at this uh, vaccines, corona vaccines, and we have seen fake vaccines also, right? We have seen fake vaccines also. Could these fake vaccines come into the market without the active connivance of the officials? Obviously not. Everywhere you find. Corruption can also involve anyone, as you can see here, politicians, government officials, public servants, business people, or members of the public. Everyone is involved in corruption. Everyone is involved in corruption. You know, Next, as you can see here on the screen again, corruption happens in the shadows, often with the help of professional enablers such as bankers, lawyers, accountants, real estate agents, opaque financial systems, and anonymous shell companies that allow corruption schemes to flourish and the corrupt to launder and hide their illicit wealth. You must have seen recently Panama Papers and so many other papers wherein almost all topmost industrialists in the country, rich people in the country, sportsmen in the country have these foreign accounts, including a Bharat Ratna called Sachin Tendulkar. All of them had foreign accounts. In fact, you become Bharat Ratna only for doing those kind of things, right? So money laundering, you have to hide your wealth. If it is illicit or not, you have to hide your wealth because you don't want to pay taxes. On the other hand, since the tax rates are so high, it results in more corruption. You can say that which is a cause and what is the effect, very difficult to differentiate here. Since the tax rates are so high, people will indulge in corruption, they will indulge in money laundering. That is what happens. They will open shell companies, right? And then they will launder the money to those companies. For example, how this corruption takes place through shell companies. You have an industry in India, and then you have opened a shell company in a foreign country, like say in Europe, in any of the countries in Europe, or in these in islands near Pacific coast. All these islands, what you call them as tax havens. You open a company there, then you will import. You will import from the company. The company exists only on paper. You will import so much of raw material from the company. The company sends you a bill, and you will pay the money to that company, and the money will go into that account. And here you are saving, how you are doing what you are doing. Your all ill-gotten wealth, you know, all your ill-gotten wealth, you are transferring it to those foreign lands through these fake transactions. Then from those foreign lands, it will come back again into the country in the name of through what we call foreign investment. Foreign investment is not taxed. Since we need foreign investment, it is not taxed. So all this black money running into hundreds and thousands of crores of rupees will become white through this money laundering. And then you invest in those shell companies. You will deposit your money in the foreign banks. From there, you will buy assets in those foreign countries also. You will buy assets in those foreign countries. That is how this corruption is there. That is how you find this corruption, right? And what happens is that what as the statement here you can see here is yeah, exactly. Round tripping. What we say here is that corruption adapts to different contexts and changing circumstances. It can evolve in response to changes in rules, legislation, even in technology. For example, as we study, we thought that by introducing this Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, and mobile direct benefits transfer, we have reduced corruption. But that is not the case. We have seen so many fake accounts, so many fake beneficiaries, so many fake Aadhaar cards, so many fake people. And what do they do? And what do they do? They use all this money, all these fake accounts to earn huge amounts of money. NREGA, take the case of NREGA. In a village, you know, there will be 5,000 NREGA job holders. The population of village is only 1,000, but there are 5,000 job holders. And all these fake NREGA accounts are created by the village panchayat president with the help of the local officials. They are created with the help of local officials. And then they will withdraw the money using technology. If you go to the bank and withdraw the money of all those accounts, banking officials might become suspicious. So what do you do? What do? You will withdraw the money through ATM cards, through debit cards. Nowadays it is only online transactions also. It becomes very easy. Online transactions only. You don't have to withdraw the money through ATM cards also. Everything is online. So the technology was intended to reduce corruption. Technology was intended to eliminate corruption. The same technology is being used now to promote corruption. Now coming back here, what is the cost of corruption? What is the cost of corruption? Political cost, your freedom and the rule of law. When there is corruption, there will not be any rule of law. Absence of rule of law itself means corruption. Your freedom will be lost. Why? Because rich people will become richer, poor people will become poorer. The more poor you are, the more corrupt, the more poor you are, the less free you will be. Because you have to depend on others for your survival. What are the social costs of corruption here? Your participation and even your trust in government. What really is that a social contract? between the citizens and the government. This social contract is on the basis of the trust between the citizens and the government. And once there is so much of corruption, you lose the trust in your government. So much of corruption means you are, you are completely losing faith. It can result in collapse of societies. This is another reason why you know there, there is we should not have corruption. Environmental costs. Your chance for a healthy environment and a sustainable future. Why? Because when the rich people have a lot of money, when the rich people have a lot of money, what do they do with that money? They indulge in luxuries, centrally air conditioned houses. Then those big diesel vehicles, huge amount of money on electricity. And what it results in? It results in a huge amount of damage to ecological systems. Huge amount of damage to ecological systems. Like what we are talking about, like like increasing pollution, chlorofluorocarbons, and then the green cover will be destroyed. And at the end of the day, who will pay the ultimate price for all these environmental consequences? It is the poor people. It is the poor people who will pay the price for the luxurious lifestyle of rich people. It is the poor countries who will pay for the luxurious lifestyle of rich countries. That is where the problem is. Right? This is where the problem is. Then proceeding further, economic costs. Your opportunity to build and grow wealth. Since there is so much of corruption, the society will become unequal society. Those who have access to positions of power are the ones who can become rich. As you can see here, during the pandemic time, the first generation politician, you know, he had earned so much amount of money. Suddenly, he had become one of the richest persons in the world also. How did it become? How did he earn? Crony capitalism. So what it does is that it takes away the opportunities of real, hard-working, sincere, honest, intelligent people. Why? Because it is only the crony capitalists who can earn so much amount of money, who can earn so much amount of money because of their proximity to the chief executive. Right? What should we do to fight corruption? What should we do to fight corruption? We must ensure transparency in government. The only way to fight corruption is by ensuring transparency in the government. What is this transparency? As you can see it on the screen, it is all about knowing who, why, what, how, and how much. That means who is taking the decision, why he has taken the decision, what is the decision he has taken, how he is going to implement the decision, and how much rules and regulations are violated in implementing the decision. That is what you have to do to eradicate corruption. Transparency, more transparency, and much more transparency. This is what we have to do to eradicate corruption. Right? This is what we have to do to eradicate corruption. More transparency, much more transparency. Right now, if you look at it within our government, we simply don't know how the decisions are made by the government. We don't know who is taking those decisions. We don't know why the decisions are taken. We don't know. What are those decisions? We don't know how the decisions are taken. Nothing. Everything is done in a highly secretive manner. On the other hand, whenever people demand transparency, on the other hand, when people demand transparency, you know, they are branded as anti-national. The government files cases against them because you are demanding transparency in administration. Yeah, Suniti, you are asking a question here. People see in front of their eyes that corruption is happening, but they don't have courage to say. Again, that is what I am saying. Sunidhi, what we are saying here is that if anyone wants to fight corruption, immediately the government will control those people. They will file cases against them. They will file, very severe cases against them, so that they will never come out also. And here, every political party will be the same here. Every political party will be the same here. That is, whatever may be the political party that is in power, they cannot tolerate anyone who is fighting corruption. That is the reason why these NGOs and civil society organizations are routinely targeted by the governments who are fighting against corruption. You must have seen recently our national security advisor has spoken about, he has spoken about, right? Uh, exactly, Sunidhi. That is where the problem. Even if even if uh, the local panchayat president also indulges in corruption, people cannot say anything because panchayat president has a very close relation with the local police officers. If you try to fight corruption of the panchayat president, what happens? Immediately, he will ask the local police to file cases against you. That is the reason why people will keep quiet. They know that if they try to fight corruption, they will be severely punished. And that is where the problem is. So you don't need, you know, to find corruption at the topmost level. You can see the corruption in front of your eyes. And these corrupt people have so many connections. They can use all their connections to make sure that one, they will always get, they will get unscathed from any kind of corrupt inquiries. Second, they will make sure that those who are fighting corruption will be severely punished. This is where we say the problem is. Next, you know, uh, when we say transparency, as you can see it on the screen, it means shedding light on the formal and informal rules, plans, processes, and actions. Transparency helps us, the public, hold all power to account for the common good. That is where the problem with India. The basic problem with India is that we cannot hold our people who are in positions of power, you know, you know, to any kind of accountability. There is simply no accountability in the system. Why? As I have mentioned, the problem is we have so much of this colonial administration, and those who are part of the government have a vested interest in continuation of this colonial administration because that would help them to continue the exploitation. That will help to continue them to exploitation, and this is where the problem with corruption in India. This is their problem. So what can be done? What else can be done? What is required is that this transparency is only the first step. You know, you know, it is necessary but not sufficient. It is only the first step. It is necessary but not at all sufficient. Right? It can only be kept in check. Corruption can only be kept in check if representatives from government, business, and civil society work together for common good. Everyone has to come forward. Everyone has to come together to fight corruption. Then only corruption can be reduced. That is the reason why we say what we need is multi-dimensional reforms. Since maximum amount of corruption in India is what we call political corruption, what is required? You know, since maximum amount of corruption in India is what we call political corruption, what is required is political will to fight corruption. We need electoral reforms. We need parliamentary reforms. We need reforms in our anti-defection laws. We need reforms in our governance. We must move away from we must move away from colonial structures. We must ensure complete transparency. We must fix accountability. We must ensure participation of stakeholders. For all these things, it should start with creating awareness among the people. about the consequences of corruption. We must make people believe that they don't have to accept corruption as a way of life. We must be able to create that kind of awareness among the people wherein they are willing to vote only to those political parties who show commitment to fight corruption. That is where we talk about ending this corruption. That is where we talk about curbing this corruption. We need to implement judicial reforms, legal reforms, police reforms, budgetary reforms, civil services reforms, governance reforms, reforms in the functioning of regulatory authorities. We need to implement electoral reforms, administrative reforms, parliamentary reforms. All these reforms should be implemented simultaneously. Why? Because this is where we started. We said that corruption is systemic and systematic in nature. So we have to fight this systemic corruption and systematic corruption with multidimensional reforms being implemented simultaneously. That is the reason why this Lokpal or Lokayukta or right information or e-governance are not sufficient to tackle the issue of corruption, because we are not addressing the basic causes of corruption. That is the reason why it has become a failure. So this is what we say about corruption, and I think the time is also up. So we can stop it for today. Tomorrow we will come up with another important topic. You know, tomorrow it is a part of ethics paper. Tomorrow we will be talking about this topic, Hindu philosophy, in our ethics paper. Right? At the same time, 6:30. Till then, take care of yourself.